As Chris said, my name is John Mills. My current assignment is I am the Deputy Chief of Police with the Graymoor-Devondale Police Department in Louisville. It's a small department out in the suburbs. I retired from the Metro Department in 2005. In the 3 years between 2005 and 2008, when I started with Graymoor-Devondale Police Department, I wrote and put together an anti-terrorism training program for Eastern Kentucky University. I traveled around the United States training other trainers so that they could take that information back to their departments and back to their communities and make people aware of not only international terrorism, but domestic terrorism. There's a lot of things that are going on in our country with domestic terrorists and extremists, as well as things that are going on overseas. Everybody probably remembers the Oklahoma City bombing. So we have people in this country who are United States citizens that don't like our government and are not afraid to take innocent lives to prove their point. There are also groups, extremist groups, that are concerned with the environment that will commit such acts as arson, even murder. There are groups, and these are radical groups. Now there are groups out there that are honestly concerned about the environment, but there are radical groups that will break existing laws to make their point. And so terrorism has kind of taken on a new genre. It's kind of taken on a new name. Normally, if I say the word terrorism, probably the first thing that comes to your mind is September 11, 2001. Or it may be Al-Qaeda, or it may be the Taliban. But we have those kind of things right here in our own country. And that's not to say that groups from overseas that are associated with the Taliban or Al-Qaeda that are not active here in the United States, because they are. They are. There are sympathizers, there are people who will take every opportunity to throw our government, overthrow our government. That's not going to happen, but what their goal is to make you afraid, to strike fear in your heart, to make you think that the government cannot protect you. And if they have done that, they have accomplished what they set out to do. Chris?
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
The plane was coming in. I noticed it a second before it hit the building. It looked like it was moving slowly. It lined itself up to hit the building directly.
Doorman goes to me, I never seen a plane flying so low. And we looked out at it, all of a sudden, boom, it seemed like it wasn't even real.
I said, how much takes about? Looks like 6 of those cars were taken out.
There was an explosion inside.
That changed the way America thought. It changed the way America reacted to acts of terrorism. Everybody here probably remembers where you were on that day. There are two significant events that I could tell you exactly where I was and exactly what time it was. One of them was the assassination of John Kennedy. The other one is September 11, 2001. I remember those days distinctly. They are forever burned in my mind. Chris? When I say the word terrorism, A lot of people have a lot of definitions for terrorism. The FBI came up with a definition, and this is probably just as good a definition as any. The FBI said it's the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, that's us, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. I said earlier that their objective is not necessarily to overthrow the government, but their objective is to show that the government cannot protect us, that they can operate with impunity. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. Now, the government spends a lot of money every year on intelligence, on social networks even, trying to find out what the terrorists are planning next. But it's the terrorist that is a sympathizer that doesn't have any direct ties to some of these organizations that are the most dangerous. Several years ago, you might remember the Madrid train bombing, where there were 13 backpacks filled with explosives and cell phones. And the idea was they wanted to blow up the Atocha train station in Madrid. And so they got on the trains, it was in the morning, everybody's going to work, and so they had this timed so that all of these trains that they had put these bombs on would be in the station at the same time. They would call those cell numbers and set those bombs off, and their desire was to collapse the Atocha train station. The trains always run on time? No. And that was their downfall, because most of the bombs went off outside the station. There were several that went off inside the station, but not enough to bring the building down. An interesting sideline to that is there was a rookie policeman who was going through searching for evidence, and he heard a cell phone ringing. And so he goes over, and it's ringing from a backpack. And when he opens up the backpack, it's filled with explosives. And they had not connected it right. And so they're trying to call this number to get this bomb to go off. But what they did was they had used this phone to call each other. Their own private phones, not the throwaway phones. They had used that phone to call each other to set their plans up. And then they started following that trail back and apprehended them. Well, they blew themselves up, is what they did. Chris? So where are we vulnerable? Where are we vulnerable? Everywhere. Everywhere. The two big things in Louisville every year, the Kentucky Derby and Thunder over Louisville. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Ideal place. Anybody here IU fan? 1, 2. Football games, basketball games. Anytime, any place where people gather in large numbers. Several years ago, the government captured a document from Al-Qaeda, and it was kind of a how-to handbook, how to select targets. And they said in this handbook to select targets during holidays in the United States, where a large number of people are gathered. Sports events. So we are vulnerable everywhere. Next slide. So, what does a terrorist look like? Who's that? Or who was that?
Bin Laden.
Yeah, bin Laden. He sleeps with the fishes. When we think about a terrorist, we always think about somebody that looks like that. Chris? Who's that?
No.
Anybody have any idea?
Big Ray.
Well, he's got an orange jumpsuit on. That's probably your first clue. This guy's name is Paul Hill. Paul Hill felt like God wanted him to murder doctors who were performing abortions in Florida. And so Paul Hill killed an abortion doctor and his bodyguard. For his trouble, Paul Hill was executed by the state of Florida. So, Chris? You can't afford to stereotype certain ethnic or religious groups as terrorists. We can look and say, well, yeah, all Muslims are terrorists. I have been overseas in 2 predominantly Muslim countries teaching terrorism. The people in my class were senior level police executives. Great people. They were Muslims, for the most part. For the most part. In Jordan, they were about half Christian and half Muslim. In Mauritania and Africa, they were all Muslims. But they were so emphatic about people who used their religion as a tool for killing. They were so emphatic about how wrong that was and how they had perverted the Quran. So there are people out there. We cannot afford to stereotype people. Next slide. Here's some types of laws that terrorists violate: bombings, weapons possession, arson, burglary, money laundering. There's a lot of money that goes from this country to finance terrorist organizations overseas. One of the big things that you really wouldn't think about, anybody ever have a coupon for 50 cents off on a box of Cheerios or something like that? You go to the store, you go to Kroger's or wherever you shop, and you get your box of cereal and you pay for it and you hand them the coupon. They take 50 cents off. You save 50 cents. But what if you ran a store that all you did was collect coupons and send it into manufacturing? Now what the Kroger company does is they'll take those coupons, they'll send it to the manufacturer will send the Kroger company a check, plus a little additional for handling those coupons. But what if you had a store that people just brought you coupons? They didn't buy anything, they just brought you coupons. And you send them in to the manufacturer and you get a check. Believe it or not, that is one of the ways that terrorists are being financed in this country, where that money's going. It's amazing the amount of money that you can turn over by coupons. Murder, extortion, kidnapping, airline hijacking, assorted interstate violations, buying cigarettes by the truckload someplace like North Carolina, taking them up to New York where cigarette tax is through the roof. I don't smoke, so I don't know how much cigarettes are, but I know they're terribly expensive in New York. They take them up there and sell them out the back door. And then that money goes to finance terrorist organizations. Next slide. You ever wonder why they hate us?
Yeah.
Anybody got a guess as to why they hate us? Why do these terrorists hate us?
Because
Money.
generally,
Money?
most Americans are much more successful and have the independence that we have.
Okay. All right. You know they call us infidels. Okay. Anybody else got a guess why they hate us?
Our freedom.
Our freedom? Jealous?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share a home video with you. This is taken by a father of his two children. Hakima is his little girl. She looks like she may be 8, 9 years old, I guess. Ahmed, he's a little boy. He's probably 2, 2.5. There is an interpreter. Okay, this was seized, this home video. This father's taken this video. And this video was seized and translated. And what you're going to hear, and I'll turn this up just a little bit. What you're going to hear is the father talking to his two children. Okay? Home video. Here we go.
I want to kill. I want to kill Ahmed. Halima, what do you want to do? What do you do with the weapon? I want to kill the infidels.
طيب ادينا احمد كده نشوف هيعمل ايه. امسكي انت السلاح الثاني يا حبيبي.
Take the other weapons, Hakima.
هتقاتل مين يا احمد؟ هتقاتل الكفار؟ ها؟ حمودة ها؟
Okay, Ahmed, whom you going to fight?
اعمل ده.
Muda. The infidel? The infidels?
احمد خليه خليه.
Let him take it. Let him take it.
قتل اليهود دي
You
حق
kill the Jews.
قتل
With
اليهود
Ahmed, you will kill the Jews.
دي يا حبيبي.
Weapon.
شيله خليه
Let him
يشيله.
take it. Let him take it. Weapon. Weapon.
Now let me ask you that question again. Why do they hate us? What? Exactly. Prejudice is a learned behavior. Racism is a learned behavior. It is a learned behavior. You have to learn it from someone. They're learning it from their parents. I have a friend who's North Carolina State Trooper, and probably about 2003, maybe 2004, I was doing a presentation in Greenville, South Carolina, and he was in the class. He's North Carolina State Trooper, but he was in the class. I had come over for the class because he heard that I was giving it. And he had just got back from Iraq about 2 months before that. He'd been activated and was over in Iraq. And when this video came on, at the end of the video, he said, I'd like to say something. He said, when we would go to the schools, and we would go into the buildings that served as schools, like elementary schools, he said they had books, kid books that you color in, about killing the Jews and about killing the infidels. That's us. They're teaching these kids at a young age to kill. I mean, can you imagine kids at your house picking up a AK-47